Welcome, everybody. How are we doing this morning? That's it? Come on, there's caffeine and everything. There. That's, wow. I'm here to mourn the death of. All right. Actually, I am really excited to present a panel on distribution and branding this morning with some amazing people, people that I've met in my journey as an entrepreneur. Danny, first time meeting today, and excited to do so. But just a great panel. I think in terms of the product space, people that actually make something and create something from scratch. So we have 4 people joining us today. Rusty Fetterman with Rusty's Famous Cheesecakes. Anybody had one of their famous or amazing cheesecakes? All right, thank you. Ryan Hilliard of Hilliards Beer. Come on, the 12th can fame. You guys are a tough crowd. Wow. All right. Who hates cheesecakes? Good answer. Who hates beer? All right, we're doing better. All right. Danny Cohn of High Five Pies, and as well as Fuel Coffee, is joining us. And then Sherelle Klaus of Dry Soda. So now I'm going to do an alternate direction here. So Sherelle, would you mind telling us a little bit about Dry Soda and your adventures in distribution? Quickly. No, just kidding.
All right, I'm on it. Okay. So I started Dry Soda 8 years ago. And really the idea was I wanted to change the way Americans drink soda. I wanted to create a new category of soda. So we drink a ton of soda. Just so you know, we drink 800 8-ounce servings per person per year. So now if you all start drinking that much dry soda, I'll be a much happier person. So I wanted to create something that was better for you, better tasting. And so I created in my kitchen 4 flavors of soda that had only a quarter to a third of the sugar of a regular soda, which is why it's called dry. And I didn't have access to lots of chemicals, so I only have 4 ingredients in there, which has become a great trend since I started dry, and did some unique flavors. So our original flavors were lemongrass, kumquat, lavender, and rhubarb, and now we've expanded. So over the last 8 years, we've worked really hard to create this category of soda across the United States, which is no easy task with distribution, which I just was mentioning I'm in a bad place with some of my distributors, so this might not be a good panel for me to be on right now. So take all my negativity and bitterness with a grain of salt. Anyway, and then just this last summer, we launched into a slim can in order to increase the occasions that everyone can be drinking dry. So there's never an occasion now that you won't be able to drink dry. And it also has a lower, more value price point. And we are located here in Pioneer Square, and we have a tasting room just on First and Jackson. So feel free to stop by and taste some of the new flavors. We have 4 new flavors: apple, ginger, cherry, and pear.
And they're quite good. Danny, would you mind giving us an introduction to both High Five Pie as well as Fuel?
Sure thing. I started Fuel Coffee in 2005, so also about 8 or 9 years ago, 8.5 years ago. Time flies. And I've been a barista and in the coffee industry now for 22 years. So I started in coffee back in 1991, which was a pretty exciting time to start in coffee, here in Seattle too, I'm from here. And after many, many years of working as a barista all through high school, college, after college, around the country and back here in Seattle, I kind of took the leap into opening my own coffee shop. So Fuel opened on Capitol Hill in 2005, followed by Montlake in 2006 and Wallingford in 2007. And then there was a really awesome economy crash, if anybody remembers, in 2008. And I was left with 3 new businesses and 20-plus employees on my hands and a tanking economy. So I freaked out, of course, as we do, and turned to what I always turn to when I'm stressed out, which is pie and eating. And I thought, well, if this works for me, maybe this is something that could work for other people too, and something that could also work in my brand new coffee shop. So I called my Grammy, of course, and got some recipes from her, and she shared with me her favorite pie recipes. And I went into the kitchen and spent months and months trying to experiment with these recipes and scaling them larger. And thought that if I could add some pie into the 3 Fuel coffee shops, maybe that would help us weather the storm of the economy and get us through. And lo and behold, people like to eat pie. And soon other places started calling me to see where were we buying these pies, could they sell them at their shops. And I inadvertently launched a wholesale business. We were wholesale for the first 2 years with High Five Pie, and then in 2011 opened a retail shop and still do the wholesale as well. And so we're up on Capitol Hill and are still growing the wholesale business and continuing the retail.
Excellent, thank you. Ryan, can you provide a little bit of insight into Hilliards Beer? And one, where did you get the name? Two, go ahead.
I feel like the young one on the panel here. I started Hilliards Beer 2 years ago, so we just had our 2-year anniversary. And yeah, obviously Hilliards Beer. That was not my idea, by the way. I think that guy's to blame right over there. Okay, I had all sorts of crazy names for the brewery, but those got killed in favor of something traditional. Breweries are named after a person or place, so that's where we went. I've been very fortunate in having a great team of people behind me in starting this up and getting it going. And just came out, some of you may have seen our 12th can. Seahawks are doing good to support us, so I'm excited about that. And yeah, a lot of fortunate timing has happened for us. And like Danny here, the economy affected what I was doing before as a flight instructor. Seems that with no money, people don't want to fly as much. So I turned to what I had been doing, which was brewing beer and drinking, and thought, hey, well, when the economy sucks, people like to drink, and when the economy's good, people like to drink. So why don't I do that? So here I am. No. I'm making beer, not drinking beer. Well, not much of it.
I've been to your tasting room. You guys drink a lot of beer.
We drink a lot of beer.
Yeah. So, Rusty, I'm not even going to ask where you got the name for the Cheesecake Company. But,
not my real name.
That's BS, sir. So would you mind giving us a little introduction to Rusty's Famous? Because you also have quite of an interesting background, I think, from tech, too.
A little tech, mostly branding, marketing, and just probably your textbook serial entrepreneur, because I didn't want to work for anybody. And probably that started at the age of 6. But this company happened by accident, really, and it wasn't something that I was looking to do. I grew up here in Seattle. My parents had a couple restaurants. One of them was a deli when I was a teenager, and when your family's in the restaurant business, so are you. So I spent a lot of time there and fell in love with cheesecake at the age of, I think, 14, and have been pretty passionate about it since then. As an adult, my mom finally relented and taught me how to make it, and I became an expert at making one really good cheesecake at home. And a friend of mine who was in the restaurant business, not related, a couple of years ago, wanted to try it. He tried it, flipped out. He's like, can you make this for my restaurant? I'm like, sure. So we did. Calls me back 2 days later. Can I get 4 more? I'm like, no. So, but it caused me to think about what I was doing at the time and something that I was really passionate about wanting to do. And so I did what, in retrospect, was a smart thing. I rented a kitchen and spent my weekends learning how to make cheesecake at scale and get creative. And you'll hear a lot of threads here. I heard you earlier say you wanted to do something different and something that was the best that you could do. And that was my, and is my mantra with this too. When you really love something, you want to share it with people. And you want to keep it great and not kind of fold it into the massive stuff that's out there. So that's what I'm doing with Rusty's Famous Cheesecake, and it's an artisan product. It's all natural. We make everything from scratch, and there's a very limited ingredient set. And part of the story is just being inquisitive, I think, and curious and trying things. So wanting to go gluten-free required me to learn how to get creative on that front and really trial and error a lot of things. And we ended up creating some new crusts that are phenomenal. And it's a way to differentiate yourself. So we're focused mainly on wholesale. So this was a non-capitalized startup. And part of that is finding the doors that are the most accessible in the shortest amount of time. That are the right doors for your business, too. But I wasn't looking at the time to do a direct retail business, so we're in better restaurants like Daniel's Broilers, all the Schwartz Brothers restaurants, and some others, and we just started doing grocery about 3 or 4 months ago, and that's doing really well. And we're coming into our 3rd year now, so
Thanks.
that's it.
So a question I think that a lot of people have is taking what is a personal passion or interest and looking at building a business around that. One of the key things is, as you build that plan, what is the strategy and both the strategic plan and the tactical plan for going from a hobby to a real business? And what are the issues that you need to take into account from a distribution perspective that you've learned hints that you didn't know about prior? And I'm going to open that up in terms of the panel. Microphone.
Oh, me. Oh, sorry.
Well, you did the raise. You started.
I was like, okay, did I raise my hand? I didn't know I did that. Let's see here. It wasn't really, like, making soda was not a hobby for me. I wanted to create a business. I wanted to create a really big business. So that was always the mindset. So I can't say that I was sitting here thinking I was going to have a $5 million company. I was sitting here thinking I was going to have a $100 million company, which there's a lot of steps to get to that point, which I have yet to reach. But I think it's really about truly understanding, finances and valuation. So when you're raising your money, you truly understand what it's going to take. I think if I knew what I knew about beverage distribution, I may not have gotten into the business, which is why I told you not to get into the business.
I'll second that.
So if you want to start a beverage business, try not to learn about distribution. Just go for it and just hold your breath and hope all goes well. Definitely one of our challenges is, and as you're probably finding out, is that the beverage distribution model is completely broken. It's unfixable. And so what you have to be is the smartest person in the room. You have to be smarter than your competitors, because who's going to be better at solving the problems? So it's a good question, because I just don't think you can try to really put together a plan and a strategy. And I think as long as you understand who your consumers are, and is there a place to sell the product? And where I began to realize that it was going to be okay is I knew the consumers would be there, because the Whole Foods business was growing like crazy. People were wanting natural. Carbonated soft drinks were declining. But what I needed to look at was there going to be room for me on the retail shelves? Because obviously I cannot compete with Coke and Pepsi, because Coke and Pepsi own those shelves. And they literally own the cold boxes, as I learned one morning, 3 weeks into my business, when they had pulled all my product out that I had driven around Seattle putting in. But I knew that the retailers were starting to make a lot more space for natural and organics. And so I knew that it was the buyers at those retailers, the actual buyers, they would make room on the shelves for me, and I wouldn't have to compete against Coke and Pepsi. So I think it's trying to understand, do you not just have a good idea? Are the customers going to be there? But can you actually get it to the customers? Is there a vehicle for that? Now, the thing I didn't know about was this little piece in the middle that's completely broken the distribution model. So that's a huge challenge that I work on every day. But I think as long as you understand that you have a consumer and a trend that's going to be there, but also then the place and the vehicle to execute, which is, for me, was the traditional grocery stores. I knew we'd be able to do it in the natural channel, but could I do it in the traditional grocery stores? And the answer was yes, because the buyers were giving us the room. Does that answer the question?
Well, I'd like to drill down into one part. What is the key facet that's broken? I mean, obviously, it's a really large problem. But when you say that it's continually broken and unfixable, what do you mean by that?
It's broken in the sense that there's beverage distributors out there who are going to put your product out, and they've been burned by every other small beverage that's grown up and gone off to Coke or Pepsi. And then Coke and Pepsi put it on their trucks. So at the end of the day, Coke and Pepsi are buying a lot of those brands, and Vitamin Water screwed us all big time. When that was a $250 million brand when Coke bought it, and there was a lot of distributor houses that were built on that brand. And the other piece too is that retailers may not want to get your product from that distributor. They may want it direct. So that's a situation I'm dealing with right now. And then there's also natural distributors. And what we're finding now is when you become a hot commodity, your natural distributors are going outside of their bounds and selling it into retailers that are really your DSD, distributors, areas. So you've got a lot of competing facets, and the margins are just too challenging. And so at the end of the day, distributors are doing zero for you because they don't want to get burned. So,
Excellent.
and they're not making any money. So I think DSD is going to go away in the next 10 years. At least I'm praying it does.
But you have to go through a distributor, right?
Yeah, well, for most, yeah. So the challenge is
Wow.
I can go into a retailer direct, so some retailers, so we're in 1,500 Kroger stores direct now with the cans, which upsets my specialty distributor here that is used to taking this product into QFC and Fred Meyer. They're not happy. And there's all these other sort of distributors that they'll take your product and then they can put it in. So it's really a hybrid model. It's the most inelegant, ugly situation that you do of trying to put together this thing. So I'm from high tech and I'm used to much more elegant solutions. So, and this one's ugly. So
Thank you. Dan?
I was just gonna. I mean, I'm fascinated by this. I know nothing of distribution like you guys know of it, but to me, I mean, so can I jump in with a question?
I don't think anybody would mind. Go ahead.
And kind of alluding back to what you were originally asking too, or part of that question, that sounds like a nightmare. I cannot even imagine how to navigate through that while you're making this crafted product that you put so much of yourself into, that you care so much about, and yet these distributors and the broken model that you have to work within is just so broken. So, and I mean, I deal with things like that on a way different, much smaller scale, but in knowing that and learning it more as you're in it, what keeps you going? I mean, you love what you do, and that didn't deter you from going into the beverage business, even despite that broken model. What keeps that going?
there's no way I'm going to let those guys win. And I think truly that I think the consumers are the ones that are losing. So, it's going to be, I'm not going to be able to get into places like Fuel Coffee if I don't have my distributor and they're not willing to work with us within the way the system is. And the retailers have to start understanding, you probably should bring it in DSD, and everyone's going to have to bring their margins down, but nobody wants to bring their margins down. And so it's because that's a challenge, and there's just no way I'm going to let that deter us. We want to change the way Americans drink soda. I want you guys drinking less sweet soda. I really do. So they're not going to win. And beer, and absolutely, and Hilliards
spirits.
Beer.
Less soda, more beer.
And pies.
You hit on another point. It's sort of related to distribution, but really it's about the openness and the opportunity that exists there. And so you created something that was different, and you run into this distribution challenge, but the customers and often many times the retailer wants the product. The advantage you have, and many others are doing that kind of thing, is that the big guys can't react nearly as quickly. Some of them will never be able to, because it means breaking down their production line to do something differently. So, that's, you asked the question about what keeps you going with that, and knowing that you have a great product, and that there's a big customer base out there that's demanding it and that wants it. You can't fill all of that because of some other obstacles, but ultimately you will.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear about your distribution challenges on the beverage side, because obviously we're in that as well, but we have a highly regulated side. Alcohol has a lot of rules of who can do what and where, and unfortunately that also varies state to state. So what we do here in Washington is different than what we can do in Oregon, is different than what we can do in a different place. So we try to keep it really local and keep a handle on it here. We have gone through self-distribution to start up. We've gone through an alternative distributor that wasn't, really big into beer, and now we are finally with a big distributor who mostly just does beer, and they're the biggest beer distributor in the state. And what we have learned in that is there's really no change whether you're taking it out there yourself. You still have to get out there and knock on the door and sell your product. Or get shelf space for your product, because like Nathan and I were talking about earlier, you don't sell your product to the stores. You sell your product to the consumers. They're the people that go in there ultimately and buy it and take it off the shelf and get a retailer to buy more of your product.
It's all about sell-through.
It's all about sell-through.
It's true for everything.
Right.
All these.
Well, just one more comment. So does everyone know how well Red Bull did? Red Bull became this phenomenon. That's because they created all their own distribution. So they had people out there distributing specifically Red Bull. So if you've got $100 million, you're awesome. You're golden. You can do your own distribution. But if you don't, then yeah.
That's not your budget?
Just slightly south of that.
Yeah. And I'm a fraction of that, so there you go. Go ahead, Ryan.
I was just going to say that the biggest takeaway, I think, on distribution is that distributors do just that. They'll take your product from point A to point B, and it's really great if some of their sales guys do more than go out and take orders. It'd be really great, but you know what? At the end of the day, you can't rely on that, and you need your own sales force, and you need your own people out there knocking on doors, trying to get your stuff out there.
So at what point did you transition from self-distribution to pulling in, I know that you're now with Columbia, but your first distributor. What was that inflection point, and what was the decision for that?
Our decision for that was manyfold. 1183 had recently passed, which let a lot of the distributors do things they hadn't been able to do before, made a lot of people nervous. The whole central warehousing model was, and is still not, the central warehousing model was not applicable to spirits and wine and beer. 1183 changed that and let Kroger and Safeway and some of those stores have one warehouse and put all their alcohol in the truck to go out to their individual stores. So that changed the distributor model, where previously each individual Safeway had to get a delivery from the distributor of the alcohol, and they weren't allowed to centrally warehouse that. So that changed a lot of what was going on in the distribution business, and beer didn't really change, except that everything else changing around it changed what was happening. So we saw some opportunities. Some littler distributors that had mostly done wine and spirits, or wine, wanted to get into spirits and beer, and we thought, hey, we're new guys, we know nothing about distribution. These guys have a network, they're statewide. Hey, why don't we go with that? And that worked really well for us at the time. It got us statewide distribution 5 months in.
Well, I think we started in October of 2011, and then by May we signed
Yeah.
up. But I think it was also a matter of being able to keep up. I mean, I was doing sales and
Right.
delivering for everything up to that.
Right. Yeah, so our sales and delivery guy right here, doing everything for us for those first 5 months.
And joining the panel, which is awesome.
You want a job?
Here, let me hand you the mic. Actually, he's probably the guy that should be up here as more of our strategy. I make the beer and make sure that we have beer. We always say he's winning if the fridge is empty, and I'm winning if the fridge is full.
So, Rusty, I want to also transition a little bit into what is the strategy for you've gone wholesale, and then you plan to do a retail at least some point in the future. Yep. What is your logic and thinking behind that type of plan?
Well, I alluded to it a little bit. I mean, the strategy for me was speed to market and little capital, and that for my business that meant wholesale, not retail. I think that there's a big opportunity for my product in a particular type of a retail concept, but that's a far way down the road. But you're talking about distribution. So I'm still self-distributed, and you talk about the inflection point. It's when you're doing everything, and you think you can. You got so much adrenaline pumping because you've got this thing that you love to do, and it's working, and you can work 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I was
Trust
going
me,
to say,
you
and
can.
at some point, where you go to a distributor is when you realize that you need to sleep.
You need to sleep, and it's not the best way for me to use my time either.
You can just go to Fuel Coffee and take care of that, by the way.
No problem.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Coffee and pie. So, yeah, I mean, I think every business is different, and you got to kind of spot the opportunities that are there. But for me, wholesale is the way. And then, so the other thing is not to get distracted by that, because I wanted to do retail. Found a third-party partner to do that via online that is pretty painless for me. So the same products that I make for wholesale, we just inject into direct through this partner, and it didn't really take any focus off of what the core strategy was.
So a question I have in regards to, as you're building these businesses with very strong brands, how do you work with distributors and or partners to encourage and to continue to build on that brand as it gets farther and farther out of your day-to-day reach and management?
I don't know. Can you tell me?
Damn it. I was looking for some insight. Sure.
I'm so confused
Just
about when I'm
go.
supposed to talk. That's actually a really good question, and one that I think we were really proud of how tightly we held onto our brand, and where the product could be sold, because that was our biggest issue. Was we were a high-end glass bottle soda that was sold into high-end restaurants, and we didn't want it at a convenience store. So we actually, with our distributors, had lists of where they could sell it and where they couldn't sell it, which is also one of the reasons now we have cans, and so now we can really open the doors. So it's also one of the reasons the distributors don't love me, is because, I limit where they can go with the product. So that's one way. And I think it's true communication with them about brand standards. And I will admit I've been called relentless, the rest of the way that goes with that, a lot of times, and only from distributors, but because I'm so keen on making sure that they keep our brand standards, they use the POS in the right way. I mean, it's everything for us. And so, one of the first distributors I brought in down in Southern California said, okay, we've agreed to bring it on, but Northern California says you just can't you can't ever go up there. You have to send your people, you don't get to come. Because you really want to make sure that everybody's getting it. So we used to do a lot of training with them. We do a lot less of that now, because we feel like the brand has actually really settled into itself, and it's well known enough that that part's okay. So our bigger challenge, though, is just going nationwide with it now, and hoping that everybody else understands it. Because now we have a lot less opportunity to touch people. And at the end of the day, it's like what you said, these distributors are not out there selling your product, so it doesn't really matter. What matters is where they sell it, and are they delivering it in a decent shape, So it's not like these sales guys are out there selling your product. And the only time they do that is when you do a crew drive with them. And again, I've been banned from crew drives, so anyway.
But that's just the point. On a crew drive, a ride along, you're the one out there selling it. They have the contacts. You're going into the accounts. And there are a lot of sodas out there, but I would venture to say that there are a few more beers out there. It gets to be difficult to differentiate yourself where we are. So
how do you do that then? If there's so much competition, especially in Washington State, how many breweries are there?
What are we officially?
Like 250, right?
I think we're 190 breweries in the state of Washington. I guess we differentiate ourselves a little bit by being one of the few who actually packages our beer and tries to get it into grocery stores.
You co-pack it yourselves?
Yes, we have a canner in our brewery.
Oh my gosh, we need to talk.
Okay.
So Rusty, what is with your branding and with Rusty's Famous Cheesecakes, you're really just starting out, getting out there, you're bringing on new accounts. What's your plan for training and bringing people onto what your brand means and signifies?
I train myself every day to go out there and work hard. Seriously, the branding piece is huge. And I think the one word I associate with it that all of us have with our companies and that you need to have is authenticity. You know who you are, and I love hearing what you said about being relentless about it, because everybody will either forget or ignore or try to change what you're doing with it, and you know what your idea and your core value is, and that's how you're building your product around your brand and everything that you do. So for me, being the little guy, it's like take restaurants as an example. I don't have a big marketing budget, but my brand is essential to differentiate from. And being self-distributed, my competition is in with large national distributors who have 15 different cheesecakes, and they've commoditized it. And so it was selling something local and something unique, and then having an authentic brand to go with that. And then the kicker was getting restaurants to brand it on the menu, so that when people come in, they're not ordering cheesecake, they're ordering Rusty's Famous Cheesecake.
So Danny, I love what you've done with High Five. You're now in 20 accounts, you were saying? What are your plans for the next stages, and how are you going to get there?
That's a good question. We are growing the wholesale for sure, but our accounts are much smaller. They're just other coffee shops or restaurants and other places like Fuel. There's a grocery store and I mean, it's very small scale, you know,
But there's a
comparatively.
bajillion of them.
But there's
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's enough. So we want to grow that, and just like what everybody's saying, and I think you made such a great point in maintaining that authenticity. We want to make sure that we don't want to just sell the pies to anyone, anywhere, because we don't know, will that brand help represent our brand? We put so much time and training into, you know, everyone that works there, and, you know, me personally meeting, I mean, I'm in the kitchen every day, 7 days a week, 4 a.m., and there's so much that goes into every single one of those products. Granted, I work with a great staff, too. It's not all me. But there's so much that we put into every single product, into every single piece of the training of the coffee that we make or the pies that we make or any of the pie items, that we have to maintain that quality and that integrity. And so that I want everybody in the company to know, where is this coming from, and how do we, from the stage of inception of, you know, making the dough to the final product, to it being delivered to whatever account. So as much as we are out there and trying to grow and get more wholesale accounts, we also want to be very thoughtful and deliberate about it to make sure that it's a good brand pairing, and that the people who will ultimately be serving the pie, if not us in-house, understand what we're making and why.
One quick final question before I open it up to the audience is, there's a recurring kind of thread going on in regards to brand protection, brand identity, and also distribution, getting it out there. So what is the balance between getting out to where potential customers are versus protecting the brand? And is that something that has to be protected tenaciously? Hilliard?
Well, yeah, you have to protect your brand. We're, you know, in a different position legally in that once our beer goes to the distributor, anybody with a license can buy it. I can't say no, they can't have it.
And the
Yeah.
biggest thing that we face too is that retailers can price it however they want.
Yeah, that's
We
Wow.
have some places selling our cans for $4, somebody's selling it for $9, and that's something they get for $1.75. And
what Adam's saying here is basically we don't have a lot of control over the pricing. Once it leaves our hands, the retailers are free to do with it what they want. We work with and actually the wholesaler is too, but you know, we work with our wholesaler pretty closely on what they sell the beer for, and it has to be for the same price for everybody. There are no bulk deals for anybody in the state of Washington. That varies in other places, but we get, you know, some people out there, you know, they buy the beer for $1.75 a can, and they'll price it from $4 to $9. So, you know, being homogenous in the marketplace is not.
You'll let me
something
know
we
where
can
that's
do.
for $4, right?
Our tap room.
Well played. So I'm going to open it up to questions, if that's all right. Anybody have any questions for our wonderful panel back here?
You buy a goat.
Did everybody hear that question? So essentially, it's how do you deal with your customer base as the customer base transitions over time, essentially becomes the Portlandia type, right? All right.
I think this is an issue that I'm obviously dealing with right now. I had to leave a conference call that we were talking about this with an agency to come over here. And our challenge is I do have this incredible loyal base of early consumers who are proud to have been the one that discovered dry. And one of the ways that we've handled that is by making sure that we continue to do unique flavors for them, and things like that. But it is the biggest challenge because now dry is going to a whole nother level, and we are going into Kroger stores. We might be going into Target. You know, it's a whole nother world out there. So I'm not answering your question, but it's, you know, one of the ways we do it is, you know, we have social media. We are so active on social media, and we literally converse with anyone that wants to converse with us. We have super fans. We have super fan packages that we send out to our super fans around the country, and we always stay engaged with them. So it's this constant engagement. If we met you on the Urban Outfitters tour 2 years ago, we're still talking to you because you're really important to us, and we try to instill that excitement of sharing this with as many people as you can, because really at the end of the day, what you want to be able to tell them is, hey, if this thing is huge, like it's going to take over Coke, you can be like, I'm the first one that drank it. And even today on this call in New York with this agency, I mean, the guy was excited to tell me, I've been drinking it for 3 years, and that's pretty good for New York. So I still hear that. And so that's the best way we do it. And I think because of social media, you can actually stay in touch with all of those consumers. So new brands like Dry, because of social media, I think it's a whole nother level of landscape for us that I'm so excited about.
Yeah, I'd have to second that with the social media. I think that is a very key way to be in contact with your customer base and remain relevant and in their consciousness. Social media is a great big one.
And that's a way to maintain the customer base that you started with.
Right.
And is your foundation for.
But
right now.
I think what's important about that, and it's different, and the social media and other technologies provide new tools to do it, is it's a different model of communication. It's interactive. And you're trying to build relationships, especially with that early adopter. They are important. They want to feel important and feel special. And what's cool is that you have a tool like that now to do that if you use it right.
And I think that they're authentically important. It's not just a bunch of words that I'm saying up here. It is those early adopters are the key to your success no matter how big you get. And I don't know how we would have done it without social media. I mean, we can send you packages and all that, but it's this ability to continue to praise you and, thank you and appreciate what you're doing and continuing to do for Dry or whatever your brand is.
Other questions? Please.
From a business perspective, what is your favorite social media channel personally? And then which one is the one that you hate, don't do it, don't recommend it?
Everybody hear the question? Favorite social media and most despised social media channel, right?
There you go.
All right, thanks.
We really like Instagram over at Fuel and High Five. Seems to work well for us. And I mean, our product is, I'm biased, but I think it's attractive. I think it's pretty to look at pies and nice coffees. But so, yeah, that's what works for us.
Which one works the least well? MySpace? Just
I maybe. I don't know. I'm one of the few people around Fuel that likes Twitter, but everybody else hates it. So I don't know. I don't know why. I think it's okay.
Yeah, we use Twitter pretty extensively, but it's what we started out on. We went for quite some time before ever even getting a Facebook page. And that was sort of a holdout for us. We're like, no, we're not going to. We don't need this. And then we looked around us and was like, well, actually, most of the other established brands aren't doing this either. So we've kind of also built ourselves on not doing what everybody else is doing. So all of a sudden we're like, okay, hey, you know what? This is how we can engage people. And this is how a lot of people live now.
I think employing a multitude of outlets is important and not one particular. For me, before I even started the business, I created a Facebook page, and actually you talked about photos and stuff. People are really visual, and it was like, where can I get this? And they couldn't get it anywhere. Stop with the food porn, so it was just like, use the imagery that you have available, communicates a huge message with a very broad brush for free. And then, don't go too hyper on them when you do it. I like Twitter is great too because it's short bites, and you have different aspects of your customer base, and they like different things, so they'll kind of direct you. You try things, and you'll find out what works.
I don't hate any of them. There isn't one to hate because it's a different way to communicate with all sorts of different kinds of people. So I think if anyone hates one, they're probably not utilizing it the correct way. That sounds sort of preachy, but I could not be more thankful for all these channels. And I'll be honest, I didn't know, I was like, Twitter, really? But Twitter is my favorite one because it's not so much the content we put out there, it's the conversation that we're having. And of course, Instagram is freaking brilliant because now your brand is visually out there and people are so excited to share it. So I love social media and all of it.
Yeah, I think it's good to say that the different channels target a different audience. So I think they're all important, depending on who you're going after.
You just stole my answer.
I was paraphrasing.
So back to your point about each social media channel targeting a different consumer group, how does that define itself for your different channels, for your Facebook, for your Twitter? Like, as I understand it, Twitter is really good for new customers, whereas Facebook, and this is gross numbers, of course, but Facebook has a really good relevance for long-established customers, potentially. So have you seen something like that?
I disagree. You told me you wanted me to say I disagree. So
Not to me, to the other panelists.
Okay, sorry.
Well, we're supposed to arm wrestle later,
I missed
right?
that one. So for me, that's not the situation. What it is I think we find, and again, this is gross generalization, so nobody tweet that I said this, but I think that we're
Right, that's going to happen now.
If someone tweets this,
It's on the feed.
what I'm saying is normally a little bit more socially and technology savvy people are on Twitter, a little bit more active, and our Facebook followers are generally a little bit more, a little bit older, and they're not as really active on Twitter or Instagram. So I find that there's two very different consumers, the Instagram and Twitter, which generally are younger and which you might call hipper, and Facebook is maybe a little older and just south of hipper. So, I mean, and I find in different parts of the country too. So I find on the West Coast there's a lot more Twitter. Southeast apparently is, I mean, for us we found is huge with Twitter. I would have never guessed that. But anyway, so.
Just also have like a younger demographic that just basically social media hops. And so, you know, when they feel, it's kind of your hipster effect, when they feel like it's gotten too mainstream or isn't working for them, they move, or somebody creates a new channel, you know, which is where Instagram came from. And, you know, just keep your eyes open because there's probably a new one being created right now that we'll be all using next year.
Any other questions? Right here.
Actually, right on that note, are there any social media channels that are up and coming that you guys are active on? Do you guys kind of just go with what's got the numbers right now, or are you thinking forward and trying to figure out what's going to be the next Twitter, the next Facebook, so that when that happens, you've already got the presence, so when they go looking for you, you've already got it and you've already got them
So if I may, the question was, what are the new up-and-coming social media channels?
that you're using. I
Well,
know they
this is
are,
gonna
but
be-
I'm wondering if you guys do.
So you're Miss
I was gonna
Portland.
say,
Tell
this is
us.
an embarrassing question. Okay, my social media guy was going to kill me, but Vine, we're using Vine quite a bit. Our creative director is Richard Blaze, who is a Top Chef All-Star, and he uses all sorts of social media, and Vine is one of them. And I'm sure somebody at Dry Soda knows a hipper, cooler, quicker one, but Vine's the latest one I know about. But they don't let me know a lot of stuff, so.
Anyone else? Yeah. So there was yes, I see. Can we get along here? Oh, there's one behind the column. That's what you're doing. Yeah, please go ahead.
So I have a company that makes protein bars, and I've definitely seen some of the same kind of challenges you guys have talked about with distributors. And I think Ryan, you were talking about what your own in-house sales force could be. But have you guys used or what's been experience with regional brokers instead of kind of your own in-house sales force?
So the question is regional brokers versus your distributor sales team, or your actual internal sales team? Okay, thank you.
We have no experience with that. We do in-house sales. We're the ones out there selling the beer. Haven't used anything like a regional broker.
So we do use brokers, but brokers are, you know, 2 steps above a distributor. So again, you're going to have an in-house sales team. There is no way around it. I've got one. Interestingly, I actually have an outsourced sales force, which is kind of a hybrid of a broker. They really manage the broker and do more. And I'm using them with the natural channel and national accounts, and that is actually working really well. But there's only one of them in the country, but I think that's a model that can start to work. So I supplement my internal sales force with that. But I wouldn't rely on a broker if you don't, unless you are really relentless with that broker and can kind of stay very on top of them. They're really there to sort of manage your promotions and manage the business at the retail level, not to go in and sell it for you. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, a lot of the, I think, benefit of having an in-house sales force is, again, that you really are controlling the message. And you're out there and telling them what you want to get across. You're educating the people who are actually out there selling your product. When we go and sell beer into bars and restaurants, we're not selling to the bar and restaurant. We're trying to get them on board and get them excited about the brand. So they're actually the ones selling our stuff to the people who come in. And to do that, they have to know about the brand. They have to be able to talk about it and be excited about it. Adam?
I just wanted to add really quickly that as a result of, when we're selling our own product, it's just me selling our product in there. It's not like me trying to find an array of products to get into that account. It's literally trying to figure out which one of our products is going to fit in there best, and actually working to get that one in there, not just one of the different companies that I'm repping.
Our product, and trying to figure out which one of our things will fit best with that bar or restaurant and the demographic that's there.
With that, I'd like to conclude, and personally, I'd like to thank everybody here on the panel. Sherelle was instrumental to me when I was starting 2Bar, just beginning to think about it, and she said, "Don't do it. It's the most stupid thing you could possibly do," and she was proven correct, and I love every day of it. Rusty is a good friend that I've got to know after this, and has been a great commiserator with starting a business, and Ryan and Adam have been fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to knowing you, Danny. And I just wanted to say what a great panel, wealth of knowledge and experience, and give them a round of applause if you don't mind.